I met Claire when I was 22. We were both undergrads back then, me in pre-med, her majoring in communications. She was the type who lit up a room with a laugh and made you feel like you were the only person that mattered. I wasn't the loudest or the flashiest guy, but she said I had something. Still Waters, she called me. Back then, I believed her. We dated for 4 years. Through my MCATs, her internships, bad takeout in our shared apartment, and late nights spent half asleep on the library floor. When I got into med school, she cried harder than I did. She said she wanted to build a life with someone who was going somewhere. I thought she meant with me. We got married the summer before my residency started. It wasn't a lavish ceremony. Just close friends, her parents, my brother, and the promise that we were going to make it work, no matter how hard it got. The first year of residency nearly broke me. Long shifts, little sleep, mounting pressure. Claire was there for all of it, or so I thought. She packed lunches I never ate, left sticky notes on my dashboard, sent texts that said things like, "Remember why you started," and "Proud of you." It wasn't perfect, but what marriage is. I figured the distance was temporary, that when things settled down, we'd find each other again. But before I could catch my breath, I got sick. It started as fatigue, then weight loss, nausea, the usual suspects. I brushed it off at first. Stress, poor diet, overwork. But something didn't sit right. After a round of labs and a scan, the diagnosis came in like a wrecking ball. Stage 2 colon cancer. I remember sitting in the cold, sterile room while a colleague awkwardly read the results. I didn't say much, just nodded, then drove home. Claire was folding laundry when I walked in. I told her straight. No soft landing. Just the facts. She froze, then slowly sat down. For a moment, she looked like she was about to cry. But then she just didn't. "We'll figure it out," she said flatly. And that was the end of it. The next few weeks were a blur of consultations, treatment options, insurance calls, and late-night panic spirals. Claire was there, but not really. She'd leave the room when the oncologist called. She skipped one of my chemo sessions because her friend was having a rough day. She stopped asking how I was doing. Just left smoothies in the fridge and started sleeping on the couch. I thought she was scared. I thought she was overwhelmed. I gave her space. I shouldn't have. Because one day I came home from treatment and the apartment was empty. No note, no message. Just her keys on the counter and a voicemail that said she couldn't do this. I stood in that doorway for what felt like hours. My legs shaking. My mouth dry. I was 29. Bald. Sick. Alone. And completely blindsided. She didn't even wait to see if I would survive. She just left. The weeks after Claire left were the worst of my life. Not because of the pain or the chemo or even the endless nausea that made food taste like metal and sleep feel impossible. It was the silence, the empty apartment, the cold side of the bed, the quiet reminder every day that the person who swore to love me in sickness and in health had chosen the exit the moment it got hard. My brother stepped in, brought groceries, sat with me during treatments, told jokes even when I wasn't in the mood. He didn't ask questions, just stayed. And I'll never forget that. After 6 months, the scans came back clear. My hair started growing back. My appetite returned. But something inside me didn't. The part that used to believe people when they said, "forever," that part was gone. I moved to a different apartment, focused on recovery, buried myself in residency. I didn't talk about Claire. Most people didn't even know I had been married. I liked it that way. I finished my residency and took a fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery. The top of the mountain. I worked harder than I ever had. Because when you've been to the bottom, clawing your way up becomes a reflex. Years passed. Promotions followed. I became attending, then senior surgeon, then head of my department. I was 38 when my hospital merged with another regional medical center and our teams began rotating between facilities. It was a logistical headache. New staff, new protocols, new everything. But I didn't complain. I was good at adapting. I had a morning case scheduled. Nothing complicated. Valve repair on a female patient in her early 40s. Chart read, Claire M. My hands froze over the file. M could be anything. Michaels, Morgan, Martinez. I clicked it open anyway. Full name: Claire Matthews. Age, 43. No allergies. Scheduled for prep at 8 a.m. surgery at 10:30. I stared at the chart for a long time, then clicked the patient photo. There she was. Claire. A little older. Paler. Her hair now darker than I remembered, and eyes that still carried that same glassy distance I once mistook for strength. I closed the file and sat back in my chair. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I just felt still. Like I had just come full circle and wasn't sure how to feel about it. I could have recused myself, sent a message to the coordinator and asked for a switch. No one would have questioned it. But I didn't, because part of me needed to see her again. Not for revenge, not to make her feel small, but to look her in the eye and remind myself that I was still standing. The pre-op room was quiet when I walked in. Claire sat on the bed in a hospital gown, fiddling nervously with her ID bracelet. She didn't look up right away. Probably thought I was just another nurse coming to check vitals. Claire Matthews, I said calmly, clipboard in hand. She looked up. Our eyes met. And in that moment, her entire body froze. Daniel, she whispered like the word caught in her throat. I gave a small nod. No emotion. No smile. Just the same neutral face I wore for every patient. I'll be your surgeon this morning, I said. We'll be repairing a bicuspid aortic valve. It's a routine procedure. Barring any surprises, your recovery should go smoothly. Her mouth parted slightly. She looked pale. You're a surgeon now? Have been for years, I replied flatly. Do you have any questions about the procedure? She blinked quickly. I didn't know you were here. It's a rotating schedule, I cut in. I wasn't supposed to be at this facility until next month. They moved some things around. She looked down at her lap. Her fingers were trembling. Daniel, Let's keep this professional, I said, voice steady. You're scheduled for anesthesia in 30 minutes. The team will walk you through prep. You'll be fine. Do you hate me? She blurted out. I paused, just for a second. That's not relevant to your surgery, I said. I'll see you in the OR. I turned and left without waiting for a reply. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. I had trained for years to stay composed in pressure. And I was never more grateful for that skill than in that moment. In the scrub room, one of the younger residents asked me about the case. Simple repair, I told him. Shouldn't take more than an hour. You okay? He asked. You look off. Just focused, I said. And I was. Not on the past. Not on her. But on doing what I had come here to do. Save lives. Even hers. The moment she went under anesthesia and the mask dropped, she wasn't Claire anymore. She was a patient. A body. A beating heart I was there to protect. And I did. The surgery went flawlessly. Clean incision. Smooth repair. No complications. I closed the chest myself, double-checked the post-op notes, and handed the case off to recovery. I didn't visit her afterward. I didn't leave a note. I just signed off and went home. Because what needed to be said had already been spoken in silence. I wasn't the man she abandoned anymore. I was the one who kept her alive. 3 days passed before I heard anything else about Claire. I didn't expect to. I'd made it clear I wasn't looking for closure. I didn't need an apology. But the past has a way of tapping you on the shoulder just when you think you've outrun it. I was reviewing a chart in my office when a nurse knocked on my door. You have a visitor in the lobby, she said. She says she knows you. Says it's urgent. I looked up. Name? The nurse hesitated. Claire Matthews. I sat still for a moment. Then I closed the chart, stood up, and walked downstairs. She was sitting alone in one of the blue lobby chairs, still wearing the patient bracelet, her face a little drawn, but alert. When she saw me, she stood. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded once, then gestured to the side hallway. It was quiet there, out of sight from patients and staff. I shouldn't have come, she started. I had to say something. You already said enough, I replied. She winced. I didn't leave because I didn't love you, she said. I left because I was scared. I didn't know how to handle watching you fall apart. I thought if I stayed, I'd fall apart too. I crossed my arms. You didn't even leave a note. I know, she said quietly. That was cowardly. I was a coward. The silence between us stretched for a few seconds. Then she looked up at me. When I woke up after the surgery and saw your name on the discharge paper, I thought it was a mistake. Then I realized it wasn't. And that somehow, after everything, you still saved my life. It wasn't personal, I said. You were a patient. I do my job. She nodded slowly. Still, thank you. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Then she said it. The one thing I didn't expect. I've been following your career, she said. Quietly, from a distance. I saw the article in the journal. The awards. The grants. You did everything you said you would. And more. You didn't believe I would? I asked. I didn't believe I deserved to be there to see it, she replied. And I still don't. I let that sit. Then I finally spoke. People don't always get what they deserve, Claire. Sometimes they just get lucky, and sometimes they don't. She nodded again, then turned to leave. But just before she walked away, she looked back. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. And with that, she was gone. I stood in that hallway for a long time, not because her words shook me, but because for the first time they didn't. The apology came too late to matter, but not too late for me to finally put it down. After she left the hospital, I didn't think I'd ever see her again. I didn't plan to. I thought that was the end of it, a strange twist in the story of my life, a quiet loop finally closed. But 2 weeks later, an envelope showed up in my department mailbox. No return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a short letter. It read, "You don't owe me anything, but I owe you the truth." I sat down at my desk and read the rest of it. She told me everything. How after she left, she'd moved back in with her parents for a while. How she'd tried to rebuild a life. Found a new job. Got remarried. But it didn't last. He left after 2 years. Said she was emotionally distant. Said she had baggage she never unpacked. She said she tried therapy. Tried church. Tried pretending I never existed. But nothing stuck. Nothing filled the gap. And then, years later, she saw my name in a medical journal and realized just how much she'd missed. She said she never tried to contact me before because she didn't think she had the right. And she was right about that. She ended the letter with, "You don't have to forgive me. I just needed you to know I never stopped regretting it." I folded the letter slowly and slid it into my bottom drawer. I didn't shred it. I didn't frame it. I just kept it. Because some things are meant to be remembered even if they no longer matter. Life went on. I kept doing what I was doing. Helping people. Teaching residents. Holding lives in my hands while mine remained steady. And then one day, during a medical conference I was speaking at, a man walked up to me. Early 30s. Nervous. He introduced himself as Claire's son. Not mine. From her second marriage. "She told me about you," he said. "She said you were the best man she ever knew." I didn't know what to say. He handed me a small card. "She passed away last month," he said. "Complications. She wrote this before she went in." He nodded politely, then walked off. I stared at the card in my hand. It was a thank you note. Simple. One sentence. "You were the best chapter of my life, even if I didn't know how to read it at the time." I tucked the card into the same drawer as her letter. Then I went back to work. Because the thing about healing is that it doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it's just silence. The kind that doesn't hurt anymore. I didn't attend her funeral. It wasn't out of spite. I wasn't angry anymore. I just knew I didn't belong there. Whatever Claire had become in those years after she left me, whatever life she built or failed to build, it wasn't mine to grieve. She had family, friends, a son, people who knew her in ways I never would. People who didn't associate her with chemo bags and quiet betrayals. I didn't need closure in a casket. I already had it in an operating room. But her death did something I didn't expect. It slowed me down. For years, I had pushed forward at full speed. Publishing, operating, speaking, teaching. My calendar was a brick wall of commitments because it was easier to stay moving than to sit still with old memories. After Claire passed, I took my first real vacation in over a decade. Not to Europe. Not to the beach. Just a quiet cabin 2 hours out. I didn't bring a laptop. Didn't check my email. I brought books I hadn't touched in years. Cooked meals. Sat by the fire and listened to nothing but wind through the trees. One morning I looked in the mirror and realized how much older I looked. Gray in my beard. Lines on my face. I hadn't noticed. But I didn't feel regret. I just felt still. And still was new to me. On the last night before I left, I pulled out Claire's letter and read it again. Not to analyze. Not to relive. Just to remind myself that I had survived something. that I had made it out the other side without becoming bitter, that I had found purpose in the rubble she left behind. I folded it again, and this time I didn't bring it back. I placed it into the fireplace and watched it burn. The flames danced quietly. No drama, no pain, just a clean ending. When I got back to work, something had shifted. My colleagues said I seemed calmer, more grounded, a little more patient with the new interns. I didn't tell them why. I didn't explain. Some healing doesn't require an audience. It's just something you carry quietly, like a scar you've stopped hiding. I wasn't chasing recognition anymore. I wasn't building my name to prove anything. I had nothing left to prove. The person I once loved had walked away, and I had stayed, and grown, and saved lives, including hers. And somehow that made me whole in a way apologies never could. A few years passed. I turned 45, then 46. The hospital named me chief of surgery. I moved into a larger office with windows facing the city skyline. On some evenings, I'd sit there after hours, lights off, watching the sunset melt into the glass towers. It was peaceful, the kind of peace that used to feel unreachable. I stayed single, not out of fear, not because of Claire. Just because I was full, not empty. I had friendships, students, purpose. I didn't need someone to fix anything inside me. I wasn't broken. But one day, a new nurse transferred into our department. Her name was Renee. She was calm, focused, quick on her feet. She reminded me of who I used to be when I started. Quiet intensity, clear eyes, no pretense. We didn't talk much at first, just short exchanges during rounds. But over time, I noticed the way she listened. The way she didn't flinch under pressure. The way she always stayed until every last patient was checked and charted, even when her shift had ended an hour earlier. One night after a long trauma case, I found her sitting alone in the break room with a tea bag in one hand and an unread book in the other. I sat across from her and asked what she was reading. Something about the science of trust, she said. Irony, right? I smiled. It was the first time in years I felt something shift inside me. Not a grand realization. Not some romantic awakening. Just warmth. Like a pilot light flickering back to life. Over the next few months, we had more conversations. Walked the same hallways. Laughed in the margins of high-pressure days. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't volunteer it. But I could feel the difference. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't a rescue. It was two people moving slowly in the same direction. I told her about my cancer one night when we were watching the rain hit the windows from the staff lounge. She didn't pity me. Just nodded. You must have gone through hell, she said. I nodded. And you came back better, she added. Not everyone does. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until she said it. One night, she asked if I'd ever been married. I paused, then said a long time ago. She didn't push. Just let it hang there. It was enough. Because I wasn't looking to rewrite my past anymore. I was just finally ready to live beyond it. The first time Renee came to my apartment, she noticed the photo on the shelf. It was from a medical conference years ago. Me and 3 colleagues, all of us in suits, standing in front of a podium. She smiled. You look taller when you're not in scrubs. I laughed. It had been a long time since someone made me laugh at home. She walked around slowly, not snooping, just observing. You live like a man who spends more time fixing others than being home, she said. I shrugged. Guilty. Then she pointed to the shelf where the framed degrees sat beside a single ceramic mug that had clearly been through too many dishwasher cycles. You ever think about what your life would have looked like if things had gone differently? I paused. I used to, I admitted. Not anymore. She didn't ask what I meant. She just nodded. That was the thing about Renee. She never needed the whole story. She just listened to the pieces I was ready to offer. One evening, after a double shift, we sat on my couch with tired shoulders touching. She leaned her head against mine and whispered, "You're the calmest storm I've ever met." I don't know why that line stuck with me. Maybe because I'd spent so long believing I was the wreckage, not the storm. I didn't know what we were yet. There were no labels. Just consistency. A quiet presence. But that was more than I'd had in a long time. Months turned into a year. We worked together. Ate together. Traveled a little. Never too far. Just enough to remind ourselves there was a world beyond hospital walls. And every now and then when someone mentioned Claire's name in passing, maybe an old staff member who'd worked at the other hospital, I didn't flinch. I didn't freeze. I just acknowledged it and moved on. Because the chapter was closed. Fully. With grace. not bitterness. And when the hospital announced plans to name a new wing after me, the Daniels Surgical Innovation Center, I thought about where I had started. A sick, scared in turn abandoned by his wife in a dark apartment. And now, here I was, standing in a courtyard under a blue banner with my name in bold. Renee stood beside me. She didn't cry, just held my hand tightly and whispered, "You did this. No one gave it to you." And in that moment, I realized something I wish I had known sooner. Survival isn't just about beating the odds. It's about what you do after, who you choose to become when no one's watching. And if there's any revenge at all, it's living well without needing anyone to validate it. Years ago, if you asked me what closure looked like, I would have described an apology, a face-to-face moment, a grand realization. But now I know closure is something much quieter. It's walking past old memories without stopping. It's hearing the name of someone who hurt you and not bleeding all over again. It's waking up beside someone who didn't know your past, but chooses to stay for your present. Renee and I never made a big announcement. No engagement post. No ceremony. Just a quiet agreement on a cold morning, sitting in the kitchen drinking tea, that we were better with each other than without. We moved into a new place. Still simple. Still mine. But now with a second toothbrush beside the sink and 2 coffee mugs drying on the rack. I still work in surgery. Still teach. Still sit by the window at sunset. But now I do it knowing that life didn't end the day Claire walked out. It began. In a new form. One that took years to shape. One that I carved out from pain and stitched together with perseverance. If Claire were still alive, I think she'd be surprised. Not just that I made it, but that I made it without her. That the man she once left in a hospital bed had become someone strong enough to hold others up. Someone steady enough to love again. And someone wise enough to forgive, not because she deserved it, but because I did. I forgave her. Not to welcome her back, but to finally let her go. That's the thing about survival. It's not about being untouched. It's about being changed and still moving forward. So if you're watching this and you've been left behind, whether by a lover, a family member, or life itself, remember this. The ending they gave you isn't the one you have to keep. Write your own. Live it boldly. And when the past comes knocking again, let it see the version of you it never thought you'd become. Because that's the best closure of all. Thank you for listening. If the story touched you in any way, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ground up, I see you. You're not alone. Take care. And I'll see you in the next one.